Wrathchild Bass Lesson. Basic information. Key E minor. Time signature 4/4. Tempo 100 beats per minute. The bass line of Wrathchild was originally played by Steve Harris of the band Iron Maiden. Steve plays bass with his fingers rather than using a pick. I, however, due to the virtuosity of Steve's bass lines, find it hard to get the clarity I want with my fingers. Therefore, I use a pick. The picks I choose have a very soft attack and they sound similar to a fingerstyle bass. They are Ibanez Prestige Elastomer picks. For those wishing to play Wrathchild with their fingers, feel free to do so. But beware, it will be a challenge if you aren't used to playing fast-driving metal with your fingers. Intro. The intro for Wrathchild is 6 measures long. These 6 measures contain 2 main patterns. We're going to call them A and B. The A pattern does change a bit. The low E is switched out for the high E, but the B pattern is always the same. So, we'll learn the 2 patterns first. Pattern A, low E. Pattern A, low E, starts with 4/16 notes. On the A string, place your first finger on the 5th fret and hammer on from the 5th to the 7th. Then 2 more E's on the 7th. Then an 8th note on the low open E string, followed by 2 more 16th note open E's. Now I will play the entire pattern at half the speed, or 50 BPM. Now the same pattern again at 75 BPM. And now at full speed, or 100 BPM. Repeat pattern A until you have it down at full speed. Pattern B. Pattern B is made up of 8 16th notes. On the D string, place your first finger on the 5th fret and play the first 2 G notes. Then drop down to the 4th fret and play the F sharp. Now back up to the 5th fret and play the G again. Then a 4-note walk down from the 7th, A, to the 5th, G, to the 4th, F sharp, and ending on the open D string. Okay, so let's play the entire pattern at half speed, or 50 BPM. Now here's pattern B at 75 BPM. And this is the pattern at full speed, or 100 BPM. Okay, so now we put the 2 patterns together. We play pattern A, low E, 3 times. Then pattern B once. Those are the first 2 measures of Wrathchild. Now, if it seems like we are taking a long time on the first 2 measures, realize it is because these patterns are going to reoccur many times in the song. Once we have learned all the main patterns, we just have to organize them correctly, and then we'll have the whole song memorized. Pattern A tends to be easier to master than pattern B, and this is why we separate them. So don't make the mistake of playing pattern A at full speed and then slowing down when you get to pattern B because it's too hard to play. This will throw off your timing in the song. Rather, play pattern B until it is up to full speed and then add pattern A to it. Measures 3 through 6. These measures contain the A and B patterns with a slight variation on pattern A. We'll call this variation pattern A high E. Pattern A high E. Pattern A high E starts with 4/16 notes. On the A string, place your first finger on the 5th fret and hammer on from the 5th to the 7th. Then 2 more E's on the 7th. Then an 8th note E on the same 7th fret, followed by 2 more 16th notes on the 7th. Now we will play the entire pattern at half the speed, or 50 BPM. Now the same pattern again at 75 BPM. And now at full speed, or 100 BPM. Measures 3 through 6 are exactly like the first two, except that pattern A contains the high E variation. So on measures 3 through 4, we play pattern A high E 3 times, and pattern B once. Measures 5 through 6 are a repeat of measures 3 and 4. So, here's the entire intro at 50 beats per minute. And at 75 beats per minute, and finally the intro at full speed. Congratulations, you've just learned the intro to Wrathchild. Don't feel frustrated if you can't get the intro up to the speed of 100 BPM. Just play along with the slowed down version you can find on the description of this video, which is around 75 BPM, and eventually you'll be able to play along at full speed. Wrathchild is a difficult song to play on bass. Take your time. Believe that you can do it, because I know you can. Just watch these videos over and over if you need to. Don't be afraid to try. You will succeed. Verse. The verses of Wrathchild are 4 measures long, and they consist of pattern A, high E, 3 times, pattern B, pattern A, high E, 3 times, pattern B. Here's the entire verse of Wrathchild at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM, and at full speed 100 BPM. Pre-chorus. The pre-chorus is 11 measures long. We'll go through each one and then tie them all together. But first, we are going to introduce a new pattern. We'll call it pattern C. Pattern C starts with a pattern of 1/8 note followed by 2/16 that occur 4 times in a row. Starting on the A string, 3rd fret, we play an 8th note C followed by 2 16th note Cs. Repeat that again. Then we drop to the 2nd fret of the A string and play an 8th note B followed by 2 16ths. Repeat this again. Here's pattern C at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. And at full speed, 100 BPM. Play pattern C for the first measure of the pre-chorus. In the second measure, we play pattern A, high E, with a slight variation at the end. Pattern A, high E, with variant ending. Rather than staying on the 7th fret high E, we will play a phrase of 4 16th notes. On the A string, play the 7th fret E, and open A, then the 5th fret D, and back to an open A. So here's the second measure of the pre-chorus at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. And at 100 BPM. The third measure is identical to the first. Just play pattern C. The fourth measure is a repeat of the second measure, pattern A, high E, with a slight variation. The fifth measure is a repeat of the first again, so we just play pattern C. In the sixth measure, we play a G on the 5th fret of the D string, we play the rhythm 8th, 16th, 16th, 8th, 16th, 16th. At the end of the 6th measure, we play 8 16th notes. First, we drop down to the 4th fret of the D string and play 4 F sharps, then a G on the 5th fret, an F sharp on the 4th, a D on the 5th fret of the A string, and a B on the 2nd fret of the A string. Here's the whole 6th measure slow at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. For measure 7, we will be playing pattern C with a different ending. Rather than stay on the B for the last part of the measure, Steve plays a little phrase made up of 4 16th notes. Starting on the D string, 5th fret, play 2 G notes. Drop down to the 4th fret and play 1 F sharp. Then on the A string, play the 5th fret D note. Measure 7 at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. For measure 8 through 11 of the pre-chorus, you simply play the A pattern high E 3 times, then pattern B, pattern A high E 3 times again, pattern B one last time. And now here's the complete pre-chorus. At 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Chorus. The chorus is 6 measures long. We're going to learn 3 new patterns that will make up the chorus. The first one, pattern D, is as follows. Pattern D. Starting on the A string, hammer on from the 5th fret D to the 7th E. Follow this up with 2 7th fret E's. Then, from the 7th fret E, pull off to the 5th fret D, landing on a B on the 7th fret of the low E string. Then you play a 3-note phrase starting on the A string, 5th fret D, then the low E string, 7th fret B, and then back to the A string, 5th fret D. Here's the whole pattern at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. On the first measure of the chorus, we play pattern D. For the second measure, we play pattern D with a different ending. Here is pattern D with a different ending. Starting on the A string, hammer on from the 5th fret D to the 7th E. Follow this up with 2 7th fret E's. Then, on the D string, hammer on from the 5th fret G to the 6th G sharp to the 7th A. Then you play the 3-note phrase again, starting on the A string, 5th fret D, then the low E string, 7th fret B, and then back to the A string, 5th fret D. Here is the whole second measure at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Measure 3 of the chorus is simply a repeat of measure 1, so we just play pattern D again. In measure 4, we learn a new pattern, E. Pattern E. Pattern E is a bit longer than most of our patterns. It consists of 2 measures. The first starts with 5 C notes played on the 3rd fret of the A string, then the G note on the 3rd fret of the low E string. 2 more C's on the 3rd fret of the A string, the G note on the 3rd fret of the low E string again. And lastly, 2 C notes on the 3rd fret of the A string. Then, this exact pattern shifts up to the 5th fret and repeats. Here is pattern E at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Measures 4 and 5 are simply pattern E. Measure 6 is the end riff for the chorus and the song. It is probably the most iconic riff in Wrathchild. We'll call it pattern F. Pattern F starts on the A string, 7th fret. Pull off from the 7th E to the 5th D, landing on the 7th fret B of the low E string. Then we play the 5th fret D of the A string, then back to the 7th fret B of the low E string. Then a walk down from the 5th fret D of the A string to the 7th B of the low E string, then the 6th B flat, the 5th A, and ending on the 3rd fret G of the low E string. Here it is at 50 beats per minute. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Measure 6 consists of pattern F only. So, here is the complete chorus at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Guitar solo. The guitar solo is 12 measures long. The first measure is just pattern A, high E played twice. The second measure starts with pattern A, high E, but quickly morphs into a solo bass fill. Bass fill 1. On the A string, place your first finger on the 5th fret and hammer on from the 5th to the 7th. Then 2 more E's on the 7th. Now the actual bass fill begins with 10/16 notes. Start on the D string, 7th fret A, then the 9th fret for 2 B's. Next on the G string, play the D note on the 7th, and then 5 high E's on the 9th fret. The last 2 notes are the 9th E and 7th D frets of the G string. Note the D at the end of the phrase is an 8th note, so it will sound twice as long as the 16th. Here are the first 2 measures of the guitar solo at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. The third measure is again just pattern A, high E played twice. Measure 4 starts with pattern A, high E, but again it morphs into a second solo bass fill. On the A string, place your first finger on the 5th fret and hammer on from the 5th to the 7th. Then 2 more E's on the 7th. Bass fill 2. This fill, in my opinion, is the most difficult part of the piece. Take your time, and if you have to rewind, no problem. That's why it's on video. This blistering 16th note fill consists of 12 notes. On the D string, place your first finger on the 7th fret A, then the second finger on the 8th fret B flat, the third finger on the 9th B, and then the pinky on the G string, 9th fret E. On the D string, your third finger should still be on the 9th fret B. Play that note, and then your second finger on the 8th fret B flat. Okay, so those 6 notes slow. You will now shift your hand down to where your pinky will land on the 7th fret D of the G string, and your third finger will then play the 7th fret A of the D string. When you shift your hand down the neck, you will want to place both the pinky and third finger down at the same time on the 7th frets of the G and D strings. First you will play the G string 7th fret D, then the D string 7th fret A. Now put your first finger on the 5th fret G of the D string, then shift it over to the 5th fret D of the A string for the last 3 notes. Here are the last 6 notes slow. Now, here are the 3rd and 4th measures at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. The 5th measure is again just pattern A, high E played twice. Measure 6 starts with pattern A, high E, but for the 3rd time it morphs into a 3rd solo bass fill. On the A string, place your first finger on the 5th fret and hammer on from the 5th to the 7th. Then 2 more E's on the 7th. Bass fill 3. This fill starts with the low E ringing open. Then 3 16th note triplets on the G string 9th fret E. Now 5 16th notes walking down. With your third finger on the 9th fret of the G string, play the 9th E, then 7th D. Now switch to the D string and play the 9th B, the 8th B flat, the 7th A, and finally for the last note, which is a dotted 8th, your hand will shift and your first finger will land on the 5th fret G. Here are the entire 5th and 6th measures of the guitar solo at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. at 100 BPM. Measures 7 and 8 of the guitar solo consist of pattern A, low E played 3 times, followed by pattern B played once. Measures 9 and 10 consist of pattern E from the chorus. Measures 11 and 12 consist of pattern F, followed by a drum fill for measure 12, wherein the bass is silent for 2 beats. The time signature here switches to 2/4, so there are only 2 beats in the measure. Remember, in 2/4, the bottom number is the note that gets the beat, and the top number is the number of beats in the measure. Thus, since the bass is silent, there are 2 quarter note beats of rest in the measure. So you just simply stop and count 2 beats while the drum fill plays. Then you launch straight into the riff ensemble. Here are the entire 12 measures of the guitar solo at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM, at 100 BPM. Ensemble riff. Section 1. Section 1 is made up of 4 measures, but it is simply the same pattern repeated 4 times. The pattern for Section 1 is as follows. Place your 3rd finger on the 7th fret B of the low E string. Play a 16th note, then an 8th, then a 16th. Now place your 1st finger on the 5th fret D of the A string for another 16th note. Then back to the 7th fret B of the low E string for an 8th and another 16th. Altogether, that sounds like this. Then play a walk down starting on the 5th fret D of the A string and ending with 4 notes, all on the low E string: 7th, B, 6th, B flat, 5th, A, and 3rd, G. All 4 of these notes are 16ths. Finally, we will play 2 low open E notes, an 8th and a 16th. Here's the whole pattern at 50 BPM. at 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Section 2. Now, we will switch our hand position to the 2nd fret and play the exact same rhythmic pattern, but with notes that are a whole step or 2 frets higher in pitch. Place your 3rd finger on the 4th fret C sharp of the A string. Play a 16th note, then an 8th, then a 16th. Now place your 1st finger on the 2nd fret E of the D string for another 16th note. Then back to the 4th fret C sharp of the A string for an 8th and another 16th. Altogether, that sounds like this. Play a walk down starting on the 2nd fret E of the D string and ending with 5 notes, 3 on the A string, the 4th fret C sharp, 3rd fret C, 2nd fret B, and 2 on the low E, the 5th A, and the 2nd F sharp. And lastly, there's the 16th note played on the open A string. Section 2 consists of this pattern played twice. Section 2 at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Section 3. Section 3 is identical to Section 2, except it has all been shifted up a half step or 1 fret on the bass. So, instead of starting on the 4th fret C sharp of the A string, we move the whole pattern up to the 5th fret D like this. This will be played twice. Here is all of Section 3 for the riff ensemble. At 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Here's the entire ensemble riff at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. at 100 BPM. Outro. The outro is 4 measures long. The first 3 measures are simply pattern F. The last measure is a slide from the 7th fret E of the A string. Here's the complete outro at 50 BPM. At 75 BPM. At 100 BPM. Thank you for watching this bass lesson on Wrathchild by Iron Maiden. I appreciate each and every one of you that watch, and I always love to hear from you. If you have any questions or want to request a song, feel free to send me a message on YouTube. Or find me on Facebook. Just search for Picking Pythagorean. PICKINGPYTHAGOREAN. Picking Pythagorean. Or send any questions or comments to pickingpythagorean@yahoo.com. I hope you enjoyed this lesson.